Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hear2See channel. Hear2See, where we focus on sharing pearls of wisdom, nuggets of knowledge, understanding the difficult, and instructions for a better life. 2 Corinthians overview. The Bible, New Testament book of 2 Corinthians, Paul's second letter to the believers in the city of Corinth. And now let's look at our overview. Chuck Swindoll's Insight for Living webpage has overviews on each book of the Bible. So we're going to take a look at his overview. Who wrote the book? Where are we? Why is 2 Corinthians so important? What's the big idea? How do I apply this? And Bible study aid. So 2 Corinthians, who wrote the book? Paul wrote 2 Corinthians at a vulnerable time in his life. He had learned that the church at Corinth was struggling, and he sought to take action to preserve the unity of that local body of believers. The letter is riddled with personal comments as Paul revealed details about the persecution he had suffered for the sake of Christ, as well about a mysterious thorn in the flesh that keep him reliant on God. So where are we? Where are we? After sending Timothy off from Ephesus to deliver the letter of 1 Corinthians, Paul, in his concern for the church, made a quick visit of his own to Corinth. Afterward, Paul returned to his work in Ephesus, where he wrote a sorrowful letter to the Corinthians that has not been preserved. See 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 to 11, and chapter 7, verse 8. Paul then departed for Macedonia. Once there, he received a good report from Titus regarding the Corinthians, chapter 7, verse 13, which led Paul to write a fourth letter to them titled 2 Corinthians in the Bible. See 1 Corinthians page to read about Paul's first two letters to the Corinthians. The apostle composed this letter near the end of AD 56, possibly in the city of Philippi. 2 Corinthians, why is it so important? This letter offers a great deal of personal insight into Paul's life that's not present in any other New Testament book. However, in chapters 8 and 9, his letter also clearly reveals God's plan for his people to give to others. Paul's first focused on the generous examples of the Macedonian churches, largely Gentile, who gave to their Jewish Christian brothers and sisters in Jerusalem. Then he exhorted the Corinthian believers to make donations of their own to the work in Jerusalem. Several realities about Christian giving became clear in these two chapters. Christians give generously according to, and at times beyond, their financial abilities. Christians give their money across racial and national lines. Christians who make commitments to give should follow through with those promises. And Christians should give cheerfully rather than under compulsion. So 2 Corinthians, what is the big idea? The church at Corinth had recently been struggling with divisions and quarrels, but for a majority of the believers, the problem had been solved by the time Paul wrote 2 Corinthians. Many had repented of their sinful ways and had come back to unity with one another with the leadership of Paul. However, Paul still felt the need to articulate a defense of his apostleship and his message. Some of the church had apparently taken his meekness among them to be a sign of moral weakness or a lack of authority. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. These accusations led Paul to defend himself by arguing that he was of the same level of importance as the other apostles, and that he had deep knowledge of the Christian faith, that he had suffered profound physical punishment in the name of Christ, and that he had received visions and revelations from God. Chapter 11, verses 1 to 12 and 13. Second Corinthians, how do I apply this? Just as Paul wrote to the Corinthians in the wake of their repentance from the divisions and quarrels, the message for today is clear. Living in unity requires us to humbly forgive one another and to follow our leaders. 2 Corinthians reminds us that even as Christians, we hurt each other and need to forgive those who wrong us. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 7. That Paul was willing to exhort the Corinthian believers to forgive those who had fallen away and repented, even as he defended his own apostleship against a vocal opposition, illustrates the apostles' commitment to this way of life among God's people. In what ways do you struggle to forgive others and or follow your godly leaders? An overinflated sense of ourselves often leads us to strike out on our own or hold on to our frustration and anger regarding the choices of others. However, just as Paul reminded us of Jesus' ministry of reconciliation, chapter 5, verses 17 to 19, we must seek to reconcile relationships in which disunity reigns. Look out for the pitfall of disunity with leaders and other believers in your own life while striving to live among all people in humility. So now let's take a look at the Bible study chart for 2 Corinthians from Chuck Swindoll's site. You can see here, again, like the other charts, on the left side, we've got scope, issue, tone, theme, key verses, Christ in 2 Corinthians. Then you can see vertically, we've got the introduction and greetings, we've got crucial concerns, grace living, and apostolic authority, and then the conclusion and farewell. This, you can see, divides 2 Corinthians up into 5 different sections, with the 3 sections being focused on past, present, and future. Very useful. Check this out. You can go to Chuck Swindoll's webpage in the description below to check that out. I sure hope this was useful to you, and check out our other videos. You know, we've got a Hear journaling series for each chapter of Proverbs, Acts, the Gospel of Mark, 1 Corinthians, and now 2 Corinthians. Read along with us, 1 chapter a day, with a Hear journal of that chapter. And we're going to go through the book of 2 Corinthians, 1 chapter a day. So join in with us and come along, or pick one of the other books if you'd rather. But this has been our overview of 2 Corinthians, Paul's second letter to the people in Corinth. Comment below, share your experiences. What have you learned from this? And read the Gospel of John chapter 3 to receive forgiveness if you don't know Jesus. And talk to God about it. Keep talking to God about it. He loves you. He wants to talk with you. Keep seeking Him. God bless.